is called VaYishlach. It starts in Genesis 32 at 4th verse and goes to Genesis 36 to the end. VaYishlach means and sent, and it refers to as Jacob is returning to Canaan, he sent messengers ahead of him to encounter Esau before he did. And in some translations say he sent angels, but I don't know how he could have called and counted and sent out angels and that they'd report back to him. I guess it means messengers. This portion, the sons of Jacob perform some of the most perfidious acts in all of Scripture. Or this calls them sordid, I agree. But as Rabbi Chaim says a lot of times, Scripture does not whitewash the patriarchs. We get to see them blemishes or warts and all, or whatever the words are, right? He calls it? It's a sanity saver, because even in that condition and those behaviors, God could still use them. So there's hope for us. So the messengers that Esau sent in the first chapter here, they report that Jacob sent. They report that Esau has 400 men. And again, the Torah tidbits talks about Jacob did the human thing like we often do, is he made a plan, he divvied up the wives and the concubines and the children, he sent some of the cattle and flocks ahead as a bribe, so to speak, and then he prays, and even God bless my plan, and afterward, right, which is this one, read this today, read it all the time, and then he does it anyway. Whatever God told him or didn't tell him, he went and did his plan anyway. And after that, we have in 32, for half a dozen lines or so, that Jacob wrestled with a man, or an angel, or whatever else it would have been, till dawn. He never got the name of this guy, but he got a new name out of it. He also got a dislocated hip out of it. And I won't talk about that. Well, Pavel, tomorrow, make sure that Rebbe Berg reads his Drash about it. I was typing Rebbe Berg's Drash, and it could take all day. It was delightful. But we're not going to talk about that. I have something else to talk about. And then we have his encounter with, at the end of that encounter, he says, I have seen Elohim face to face. So whatever the rabbis want to say, no, it wasn't God, no, it wasn't a theophania, it wasn't a theophany, it wasn't this, it was an angel, it was a man. Jacob himself, Torah himself says, I saw God face to face. Something happened. And yes, he was changed by it, but not immediately. It took a little while. Because despite his prayer in that encounter, he continued to be afraid and do the physical things. Then we have in the next chapter, he's reunited with Esau. And I'm going to read some lines from that. I like that particular portion because there's 4 lines in a row that start with exactly the same word. Vayomer, Vayomer, Vayomer Esau, Vayomer Yaakov. I like the same word 4 times, and that's the 4 lines I'll read you. And in the middle of that, when they are reunited, he says to Esau, I've seen you, and it's like seeing Elohim face to face. And I've heard all kinds of crazy things interpreting that, and it's not to be taken as something divine, spiritual, and Esau is not a god, and Jacob doesn't worship him, and it's none of that. At the end of today, listen to the Aaronic blessing, where there's several times that we ask that God should turn his face to you and do something good to you. And there's a Hebrewism. It's that when someone turns their face to you, it's with favor. They mean well, you're at peace, whatever. That's all that means. Then we have, as the tidbits say, then after that we have Shechem's assault on Dinah, and Hamor, Shechem's father Hamor, approaches Jacob asking, can we intermarry with you? And Jacob's sons come up with this plan that, oh sure, if you'll be circumcised, we'll do that. And it struck me, there was greed on both sides of this, because if you look at the lines carefully, Hamor goes to his people and says, okay, it's unpleasant to go through circumcision and it's going to disable us a little bit. But look at all their wealth and their sheep and their cattle and this and that. It will be ours. Let's do this. So there was greed on that side. Then after whichever ones of Jacob's sons did the killing, it says Jacob's sons, without specifying which ones, they all did the plunder. So there's greed on both sides a little bit. Or as Yeshua says, the loving of money is the root of all evil, including this kind of evil, including killing and plunder and all this other stuff. And then Jacob reproves his sons for the danger they created. He's yelling at them of, you've now made enemies of all the neighbors around here, and we could all get killed again. And I'm going to come back to this. And then the next lines, Deborah, the nursemaid, dies in chapter 35. And in chapter 35, another interesting thing. 3 portions ago, well, I've talked about this last year, that when Jacob was sent away to Padan Aram, to his uncle, Isaac knowingly gave him the blessing. He knew he was sending Jacob to his uncle. It wasn't deceit and hiding or any of this other stuff. Isaac says to the son that he's sending away to protect from Esau, God give you the blessing of Abraham. So he's the one who had the right to give it, gave it. And in this portion, God does that himself. So it's kind of not right to say Jacob schnooked and stole and what have you, because the 2 people with the authority to give it gave it. And then Rachel dies at the birth of Benoni, who became Benjamin. And then we have some more sordidism, so to speak. Reuben violates Bilhah, Jacob's concubine. There's a lot of that in the early Torah. And then the rest of that chapter through 31, it identifies the sons of Jacob. And then in the next chapter, truly reunited, at least for then, both Jacob and Esau bury Isaac when he dies. And then at the end of it, it identifies all the descendants of Esau. In fact, does it twice. And pleased to note, one of his grandsons is named Amalek, who shall be heard from again. And it says that the wealth of the both of them was so great that Esau had to go to Mount Seir because they didn't fit. And we'll go back to Jacob in a second. I kind of understand what he went through with that angel. I've never wrestled with an angel. I never had my hip dislocated. But I'll tell you a short story. When I was 18, 19, I don't know, 1975, I don't remember, was one of the most dangerous and worst times in my life because we were poor, we were living in a ghetto. My stepfather had married my mother so he could stay in the closet. And those who understand will understand what that means. My mother was in and out of the hospital with multiple cancers. My stepfather was an alcoholic and a gambling addict. We were hungry all the time. We lived on the nickels and quarters he had left over after he lost everything else, a pinochle. I was on a scholarship in engineering school, and I still had a job because I had to pay my mother's bills and my stepfather's debts and buy food and this and that. And to make it worse, it was winter. Frequently, when I came home from school, my mom's in the hospital, my stepfather's in the house, he would lock me out of the house because he would be in the house with people he didn't want me to see him with. So if it was January and it was cold and I'm coming home from school, he'd lock the door and I'd have to hang out on the porch while he snuck whichever man or woman or whoever he was in there with out of the house and then let me in. And I tolerated a whole lot, except that year, on top of everything, while I was at school one late afternoon, someone stole my purse and my coat. Purse didn't matter because I was broke. No money, no credit cards, no driver license. Purse is nothing. The coat was a problem because it was January and I was cold. And I didn't have another one. I couldn't afford another one. So one morning that year, and later that week or the week after the coat situation, I was walking the subway to go to school. And the last end of the street before it entered the subway station is an alley. It's not a story about being attacked. I was not. It had no side streets, no ways in and out. And I'm heading towards the subway. And very abruptly, a man appears in front of me. I guess he came up from the subway stairs, but I don't see that good, as you know, as most of you know. And thank God he was not a white guy, because if he was a white guy, I would have run. Because at that hour, early morning, in that ghetto, if he was white, he's a pimp, he's a dealer, he's a bill collector, he's a pervert, he's somebody I don't want to go near. If he's a black guy, he's probably just getting off the train from working the night shift in wherever downtown, which I assumed he was. However, when he got close to me, this guy didn't work no night shift. He was dressed to the nines, fine suit, really nice top coat, little derby, really nice shoes, and he's barehanded. And me, it's snowing, it's cold. My only thought, stupid, I was a kid, right? My only thought was, boy, he's going to ruin some fine shoes. So, no boots, no boots. And he runs out, he's running for me. And he comes in and he grabs me. Like he sees an old friend or somebody he knows and he's going to hug you and this and that. I don't know him, I never seen him before. grabs my hand, runs up to me and says, I serve the same God as you do, and I'm happy about it. What's your problem? I couldn't think of anything to say. And he's holding my hand just a few seconds, and I'm noticing I'm starting to get very warm, warm enough that it didn't matter that I didn't have on a coat. And he was watching, and when he got the response he wanted on my face, he let go, brushed past me, and left. And I spun around, because I was going to say something real profound, like, who are you, or something like that. But he's gone. Okay. And I kind of saw footprints coming up to me, and I can't remember if I saw any behind me, and it doesn't matter. And I don't know what that was, and it really doesn't matter what that was, because the bottom line is it didn't change the situation terribly much. I was still hungry. We were still poor. I was still in a ghetto. My stepfather's still a problem. My mother's still in the hospital. And although I was warm an hour or so after my first class, I was cold again, and I still have no coat. So it doesn't matter what that was, but it didn't change the circumstance. It changed me, though, because I kind of got a little taste of God saying, you know what, I own this place. It may seem overwhelming to you, and you may think it's going to kill you, but I own the joint, and I run this place, and I can step in, interrupt your little problem anytime I choose. More importantly, it's not that I can, but that I want to, and I will. And he certainly did. It wasn't instant. In 2 years he did, and it was permanent, and I have never been, for 45 years since then, cold, hungry, or poor. Well, I ski, so yeah, you get cold occasionally. That lift chair at Ptarmigan Bowl at the top of Laughlin with that wind at 13,000, that's cold. But that's good cold, because you're done, you're bottom of that slope, you are in the jacuzzi. So, go back to Jacob. Rebbe Chaim's, or whoever wrote the notes, shows him before that encounter where he's doing the stuff. God bless it. And then he changed slowly after that experience, because go look in chapter 34. The earlier Jacob is as was described over here. The later Jacob is in the same kind of problem, kind of late chapter 34, where he says to his sons, look what you just did. You've killed all the Hamor and Shechem's town. All the others are going to come and kill us. He's in the same problem. I might get wiped out. My family might get wiped out. I could be killed. What does he do? He does. Look at this, the difference in Jacob here. He does not go do the, okay, they're going to kill us. Let me divvy up the wives and the kids. Let's do all that stuff. He doesn't do that. What does he say? If you read the verses, when you go home, he says, give up the false gods, turn over the idols, change your clothes, wash. Let's go worship. Huh? That's an odd response, isn't it? Not that let me do some stuff, let's be in fear. It's okay, now that we're in the same kind of trouble I had before, let's clean house, go worship. What kind of response is that? The right one, because look what happened. 2 lines down, how many lines down it says, the fear came over all the neighbors, and nobody would dare touch the sons of Jacob. That was the right response. Whatever you got going on, I'm sure God's not going to show up and wrestle with you and dislocate your hip. And I'm pretty sure he's not going to show up some little black dude that says, keep on trucking and I'm happy I serve God. With a hat and bare hands. But whatever you need and whatever's going on in your life, and some of us, I read the prayer list. We got some hard stuff going on in our lives here. Whatever you need, God's going to show up in exactly the way that you need. But, big if, God is the one who decides what it is you need, not you. If I was going to choose what I needed that day, I would have had a coat fall off the tenement roof into the alley where I was standing. And while we're at it, it would have had a lot of money in the pockets. So I could have finished undergrad school in some warm place in Europe or something. But that wasn't the plan. God did it the way it was needed. And he knew stuff I didn't know. Like, I had to stay in Newark 2 more years so that right after I left, my mother could find the Messiah. He also needed that the Jewish boy who was with me the night that my coat got stolen from the room I left it in, my coat, my purse, he also found the Messiah. God had to do it his own way. It's none of my business. I don't run it, thank God I don't.